CoinCap lists all the digital assets that exist that we're aware of. There are new ones every day, and there are something like 3,000 or 4,000 currently on there. Most of them are really stupid. It'd be similar to like if you pulled up a newspaper in the late 90s of all the like .coms. You know, like how many of them would be worth knowing about? Not very many, but a few of them would have been. So CoinCap basically tracks all that stuff and just makes it very easy for people to watch all the different digital assets. And probably the most notable thing at this point is how many of them have a market cap over $1 billion. I think it's like 15 different assets now are worth over $1 billion a piece. So that's pretty remarkable for an industry which the entire sum of value was $10 billion, you know, a year and a half or 2 years ago. We get asked a lot how assets are added to Shapeshift, and there's not really any magic formula. If an asset becomes popular and widely traded, meaning, you know, millions of dollars of volume a day on the current markets, it'll come on our radar and we'll consider adding it. We will add pretty much anything that has high volume unless it's clearly a scam, or unless it is super complicated. So some assets that are their own blockchain and that work in a very new and strange way, we have not added to Shapeshift because they're a lot of work. I like to understand the project, like the basic way it works. For a while I didn't understand Ethereum, and after I did understand it, then I started paying more attention and liking it more. Probably the same is true with most people in Bitcoin. Once they start understanding it, they like it more because they know what it is. None of these assets have value if they don't have utility. Or in other words, any price that they have, if there isn't utility behind it, is illegitimate, and it'll crash towards zero. I want to see platforms that it can actually be used. Ethereum is innovative because you can do something with it you can't do with any other platform. So smart contracts, for all the problems that they can have if you screw them up, when done correctly, are really powerful. So our entire Prism product is built entirely on Ethereum smart contracts. When smart contracts are available on Bitcoin through Rootstock, Bitcoin might be just as interesting as Ethereum for that purpose. But to date, Ethereum is really the only platform at scale that does that. So that's utility. Before it launched, when it was just an idea, you could be understandably very cynical or skeptical about it. But it actually works as advertised. Other projects are innovating and doing something that isn't really that important. And other projects are just scams. So you gotta be careful about which is which. So every asset sort of goes through an idea phase and like an early prototype phase, and then, you know, a good outcome, it actually achieves users and success. Bitcoin is unique in that its idea phase happened before anyone cared about crypto at all. So Bitcoin's idea phase passed by without anyone knowing about it, just Satoshi really. Then when it had a prototype, just a handful of people started using it, but no one really cared or thought it would become something big. So by the time people started getting interested in Bitcoin, it already had moved into its useful phase. Ethereum is a little different in that by the time Ethereum came out, or the idea did, people were already really interested in it. You know, 1 million people were already excited about Ethereum before it launched. And now we've gone to the crazy extreme where ideas themselves will raise $200 million before anything has been built. And maybe sometimes that'll work out and incredible things will be created because an idea was able to raise millions of dollars. Sometimes that'll happen. Other times the idea wasn't worth anything close to that, and then all those people will lose that money. And that's part of the market. When an asset is just an idea, obviously there's no software. So you can talk about theoretically what it's supposed to do, and engineers can debate about how it's designed, but you can't really know or test anything yet. Once the software comes out, you can actually see if it works. You can see if it's working, and then because a lot of these assets are platforms, their value doesn't actually happen until things get built on them. So Ethereum is a great example of that, where even though the technology worked as advertised when it launched, it didn't really have utility until something useful was built on it. Now people are building things that are useful on Ethereum, and it's really justifying a lot of the current price. How valuable, you know, CryptoKitties is debatable, but I think it proves the concept that like you can do something new and cool with Ethereum that you couldn't have done before. Shapeshift's role is definitely not to bring attention to any specific asset, and we only add assets that already have launched and that are trading. And we don't, other than trying to see if it's an obvious scam, we don't do any sort of vetting on the things. We let markets take care of that. So anything that is getting lots of market activity, we'll consider adding. And we don't pass judgment one way or another. If a product or if an asset launches and it doesn't achieve utility, its price will fall and eventually volumes will fall so much that we'll remove it from Shapeshift. So we don't really help or hinder any projects. We just give people an easy way to get in and out of them if they achieve a certain threshold of popularity. An important point is that these assets are not all competing for one use case. A lot of the people that got involved in Bitcoin early, they see everything as a cryptocurrency. They think everything is competing to be currency, competing to be a form of money and payment. And with that perspective, you can see why they are hostile to any other altcoin that isn't Bitcoin, because they see it as a zero-sum game. I used to see it that way too. My revelation came when I realized that these assets weren't all just narrowly useful as currency, but they were going to experiment in many different directions and do many different things. Shapeshift's role is to be the fastest, easiest, and safest way for any human or robot to change one of those assets into another. This year has proven, I think, that we will live in a multi-token world. And when I started Shapeshift, that was not obvious. Early 2014, when the idea came, Bitcoin was 95 or 98% of the market. Everything else was just, an obscurity at best. And I think people thought I went a little crazy building an exchange that didn't handle money, because that's where all the money was being made. And it was really small. We were excited when in our first month we did $25,000 of orders. That was a huge deal for us because the market was so tiny back then. That was a whole month. Now we do more than $500 million of orders every single month. Clearly digital assets are becoming real. And Shapeshift, I think, was built right at the perfect time. I see the crypto industry as essentially rebuilding the entire financial world on a natively digital and decentralized foundation, as opposed to what it is now, which is a natively analog and centralized foundation. So many things that exist in current finance will be rebuilt and reimagined in a natively digital form. Much of that stuff will involve a token. Even more exciting than that will be the things that can be built in digital finance that couldn't have existed in analog finance.